In the fog-shrouded hills of rural Devon, Roseveil House loomed like a sentinel of forgotten sorrows, a sprawling Gothic edifice where the elite concealed their fractured minds behind ivy-clad walls. On a tempestuous autumn eve in 1935, the matron's scream pierced the storm, only to dissolve into silence. Ilara Voss, iron-fisted ruler of this sanatorium, was found slumped over her desk, lips blue, eyes wide in accusatory stare. Poison, suicide, or murder most foul? As rain lashed the mullioned windows, a telegram arrived for the incomparable Hercule Poirot. "Come at once. Death stalks Roseveil." Little did the little Belgian know. The shadows hid motives as twisted as the house's corridors. Chapter 1. The arrival of the little gray cells. The Daimler-Benz glided to a halt beneath the porte-cochere of Roseveil House as though reluctant to deposit its passenger into the maw of the storm. Rain lashed the windscreen in silver needles. Lightning forked across the Devon sky, illuminating for one stark instant the house itself. A brooding Gothic pile of weathered granite, its chimneys exhaling plumes of peat smoke that mingled with the fog. Ivy strangled the buttresses like desperate fingers. Every window glowed amber, yet the light seemed less welcoming than watchful. Hercule Poirot, immaculate despite the journey, descended with the precision of a chess master placing his king. His Homburg hat shed droplets in perfect synchrony. His overcoat, cut in the latest Savile Row fashion, repelled the downpour with disdain. He paused on the bottom step, surveying the facade with eyes the color of absinthe held to candle flame. "Tiens," he murmured, twirling one waxed mustache. "A house that keeps its secrets behind too many locks." The great oaken door, studded with iron, scarred by centuries, groaned inward before he could lift the serpent-headed knocker. A rectangle of lamplight spilled across the gravel, framing the silhouette of Dr. Reginald Hargrove. The physician was tall, angular, his white coat hanging loose on a frame that had once been athletic, but was now eroded by sleepless nights and laudanum. His mustache, though neatly trimmed, drooped like a wilted fern. His eyes, magnified behind pince-nez, darted as though expecting pursuit. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, voice cracked by urgency and something darker, guilt perhaps, or terror. "You cannot know how desperately we require your singular talents." Poirot inclined his head with courtly grace. "It is the order, the method that Hercule Poirot brings to chaos. But first, mon docteur, permit me to enter before this deluge transforms my shoes into sponges." Hargrove stepped aside. The entrance hall swallowed Poirot in a breath of beeswax, carbolic, and the faint metallic tang of blood beneath lavender water. A grandfather clock ticked with the solemnity of a metronome counting down to judgment. Portraits of long-dead Voss patriarchs glared from paneled walls. Their eyes followed the little Belgian as he removed his gloves finger by finger. "Tell me," Poirot said, placing hat and cane upon a marble console with geometric precision, "of the unfortunate Madame Voss." Hargrove's Adam's apple bobbed. "Matron Ilara Voss, widow, benefactress, tyrant, found at 9 o'clock last evening in her private study. Door locked from within, key in her pocket, windows barred since the escape of Lord Pembroke in 29. Cause of death, digitalis poisoning, enough to fell an ox." He produced a crystal tumbler from a side table. His hand trembled so violently that the brandy slopped over the rim. "The local constabulary mutter suicide, I say murder." "Suicide is a tidy explanation," Poirot observed. "But tidiness is the enemy of truth. Précisez, if you please. Who discovered the body?" "Nurse Beaumont, Miss Lydia Beaumont. She brought matron's evening chamomile at 8:30, found the door unresponsive, raised the alarm. We broke in together." Poirot's gaze traveled the hall. A Persian runner faded to the color of dried blood, a suit of armor missing its gauntlet. a faint scuff mark on the parquet where something or someone had been dragged. He knelt, producing a pocket lens no larger than a half-crown. "Curious," he said. "The mark is fresh, yet the polish beneath is undisturbed. A body moved after the floor was cleaned at 6 o'clock, yes?" Hargrove paled. "Mrs. Croft supervises the maids. They finish by 6. Parfait. And the study. Show me." They ascended the grand staircase, its treads groaning like an old confession. Gas sconces hissed, casting pools of jaundiced light. Portraits gave way to framed medical certificates. Ilara Voss, SRN, Edinburgh 1901, gold medal in psychiatric nursing, Vienna 1908. At the landing, a stained glass window depicted the Archangel Michael weighing souls. Rain transformed the colors into bleeding streaks. The study door stood ajar, sealed earlier with red wax now broken. Inside, the air was thick with the cloying sweetness of death and the sharper bite of foxglove distillate. A single lamp burned on the desk, illuminating the tableau. Ilara Voss slumped forward, cheek pressed to an open ledger, one gloved hand still clutching a porcelain teacup. The saucer lay shattered on the Axminster carpet. Tea had blossomed into a rust-brown map of continents. Poirot circled the corpse with the reverence of a priest at an altar. Madame Voss had been a handsome woman, even in death. High cheekbones, iron-gray hair coiled in a severe chignon. Lips thinned by a lifetime of command. Her evening gown of bottle-green silk was immaculate save for a single tear at the hem. "Note the posture," Poirot said softly. "The head rests at an angle impossible for collapse. Someone arranged her. Pour le fait." He lifted the cold wrist. Rigor mortis had set the fingers in a claw. "And the cup. Overturned after the spasm, yes? Digitalis causes convulsions. Yet the ledger beneath her cheek is unmarked by saliva or froth." "Curious." Hargrove hovered. The police surgeon confirmed, "Les policiers see what they expect. Poirot sees what is." The detective's gaze swept the room. Walls lined with leather-bound psychiatric journals. A glass cabinet of specimen jars. Brains preserved in formaldehyde. Their convolutions grotesque under dust. A fireplace where logs had burned to embers, the grate swept clean. He knelt again, lens to the carpet. Fibers silk, green, matching the gown, but here... He pinched a single thread of scarlet wool. Not hers, and this. From beneath the desk's claw foot he extracted a mother-of-pearl button, its shank snapped. From a gentleman's glove, perhaps, or a lady's cuff. Hargrove swallowed. Matron wore black kid gloves, always. Poirot pocketed the button with a conjurer's flourish. Now the tea. Who prepared it? Miss Beaumont brews Matron's chamomile nightly. Honey, a slice of lemon. Digitalis was prescribed for her heart. 2 drops in water morning and evening. Last night she took her own dose from the bottle on her desk. "Yet the bottle is absent," Poirot observed. The desk blotter bore a perfect circle of dust where a vial had stood. "And the cup, show me the kitchen." They descended a narrower stair to the servants' domain. The kitchen was a cavern of copper pans and simmering stockpots. Mrs. Beatrice Croft, housekeeper since the Boer War, stood at the range stirring something that smelled of time and despair. She was a fortress of a woman, starched apron, bun severe as a prison warden's, eyes like chipped flint. "Mrs. Croft," Hargrove began. She did not turn. "Tea things are washed. Nurse Beaumont left them on the scullery bench." Poirot's nostrils flared. "Lavage trop rapide. The poison lingers." He crossed to the Belfast sink where a single cup and saucer stood draining. The cup was fine bone china painted with violets, yet the pattern did not match the shards in the study. "Mon Dieu. 2 cups," he whispered. "The poisoned vessel was substituted after the murder." Mrs. Croft's spoon clattered. I saw nothing. My girls were abed by 9. Yet someone entered this kitchen after hours, Poirot said. The bread knife, its blade is wet, though no loaf was cut. And the biscuit barrel, fingerprints in the sugar. He lifted the lid. Inside, crystallized lumps bore the clear imprint of a small gloved thumb. A bell jangled overhead, sharp, imperious. Hargrove flinched. The patient's supper gong. I must... Attendez, one moment. Poirot's gaze fixed on a door at the rear, half hidden by sacks of flour. The still room? Mrs. Croft's knuckles whitened on the spoon. Herbs, tinctures. Matron distilled her own medicines. The still room was a chemist's nightmare. Shelves of bell jars, mortars stained purple with foxglove, a spirit lamp still warm. On the workbench lay a funnel, its spout crusted with greenish residue. Beside it, a torn page from a prescription pad, Dr. Hargrove's handwriting, Digitalis purpurea, 160 minims, enough to stop a dozen hearts. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The matron brewed death in her own cauldron, but who poured the final measure? A scream shattered the moment, high, animal, echoing from the upper floors. Hargrove bolted. Poirot followed with surprising agility. They burst into the entrance hall where Miss Lydia Beaumont stood rigid, a silver tray of medicines clattering from her hands. Syringes rolled across the parquet like spilled bones. She's walking, Lydia gasped, face bleached beneath her starched cap. Matron Voss, I saw her at the window of the West Tower, but she's dead, Thunder answered. The lights guttered. In the flickering dark, Poirot glimpsed a figure at the stairhead, tall, veiled in black, one gloved hand raised in accusation. Then the lamp steadied and the landing was empty save for the scent of damp stone and something sweeter. Jasmine, the perfume Elara Voss had worn in life. Poirot's mustaches bristled. Nom d'un nom. The game, it begins. He turned to the trembling nurse. Mademoiselle, you will show Poirot this West Tower, and you, doctor, will produce every soul in this house, patients, staff, even the scullery maid who dreams of murder. We assemble in the drawing room in 1/2 hour. Personne leaves Roseveil until Hercule Poirot permits it. As the household converged, footsteps shuffling, doors slamming, a patient's hysterical laughter echoing down corridors. Poirot stood alone beneath the chandelier. He drew the mother-of-pearl button from his pocket, turning it so the light fractured into opalescent rainbows. Quel drame, he murmured. A locked room, a poisoned cup, a ghost that walks. But the little gray cells, they do not believe in ghosts. They believe in motive. Lightning illuminated the stained glass angel once more. For an instant, the scales seemed to tip towards justice or deeper darkness. Poirot smiled, a small, ferocious smile. En garde, murderer. The hunt is on. Chapter 2. Suspects in the Sanatorium. The drawing room of Roseveil House was a cavern of mahogany and mourning. Crimson velvet drapes, heavy as theater curtains, muffled the storm outside. A single chandelier, its crystals dulled by decades of pipe smoke, cast trembling halos over the assembled company. They sat in a semicircle like defendants awaiting the verdict of God or Poirot. Hercule Poirot stood before the Adam fireplace, hands clasped behind his back, green eyes glittering with the satisfaction of a conjurer who has arranged every card. A small table at his elbow held the evidence thus far. The mother-of-pearl button, the torn prescription page, the violet-painted teacup, intact, and a shard from its murdered twin. Mesdames, Messieurs, he began, voice soft, yet carrying to the furthest corner. We are here to dissect a murder. Not with scalpels, but with truth. You will speak when spoken to. You will not embellish. Hercule Poirot detests embroidery. He turned first to Dr. Reginald Hargrove, who had sunk into a wing chair as though the leather might swallow him whole. Doctor, You inherit Roseveil House and its lucrative clientele upon Madame Voss's death. A motive magnifique, non? Hargrove's knuckles whitened on the chair arms. I was her partner, yes, but Ilara intended to sell to a London consortium. I would have been ruined. Still, his voice cracked. I did not kill her. Poirot's eyebrow arched. Yet your prescription pad supplied the digitalis, and you were seen arguing with Matron at 7 o'clock, voices raised over finances, a collective intake of breath. Hargrove flushed. She accused me of embezzlement. I denied it. Ask Captain Thorne. He overheard. All eyes swiveled to the second suspect. Captain Elias Thorne stood apart near the French windows, rain lashing the panes behind him like machine gun fire. He was tall, gaunt, the left sleeve of his blazer pinned neatly where an arm should be. A livid scar bisected his forehead. His remaining hand trembled around a cigarette that had long since burned to ash. Thorne, Poirot said gently, you paid Madame Voss £500 last Michaelmas. Blackmail. The captain's laugh was a dry rattle. She knew I deserted my post at Passchendaele, threatened to ruin me with the War Office. I paid. But murder... He crushed the dead cigarette in his palm. I'd have put a bullet in my own head first. Poirot noted the tremor. Morphine withdrawal, perhaps. Your room was searched. Stolen morphine ampules. You wander the halls at night, non? Patients speak of a ghost soldier. Thorne's good eye fixed on Poirot. Nightmares, monsieur. Not murder. A soft sob drew attention to the settee. Miss Lydia Beaumont sat rigid, starched cap askew, gloved hands twisting a handkerchief into a noose. Her beauty was fragile. Porcelain skin, violet shadows beneath eyes the color of storm clouds. Mademoiselle, Poirot said, softening, you brewed the fatal tea. You discovered the body, and Matron beat you here. He touched his own cheek. For insubordination. Lydia's whisper barely stirred the air. She said I was weak, that I'd inherit nothing from Aunt Clarissa if I didn't toughen. She locked me in the linen cupboard for hours. Tears spilled. But I didn't poison her. I couldn't. Poirot produced the scarlet wool thread. This was caught in the study door. From your nurse's cape, perhaps. Lydia stared, transfixed. I went to the study at 8 to collect the tray. The door was locked. I knocked. No answer. Yet footprints in the still-room mud, small, a woman's shoe, lead to the glass house where digitalis grows wild. She swayed. Dr. Hargrove half rose, then thought better. Mrs. Beatrice Croft entered then, bearing a silver salver of coffee no one wanted. She moved with the precision of a battleship, apron crackling. Mrs. Croft, Poirot said, your sister was dismissed by Madame Voss in 1919. Pregnant, unmarried, she died in the workhouse. The housekeeper's face might have been carved from the same granite as the house. Ancient history, I stayed for the wages. And for revenge, Poirot indicated the coffee pot. You polished the silver near the study at 7:30. You heard the argument? I heard raised voices, then silence. She set the tray down with a clatter. Matron locked herself in at 8. I saw the key turn. Poirot's gaze swept the room. Parfait. We have motives. Greed, blackmail, cruelty, vengeance. We have opportunity, a locked room, a substituted cup, a missing vial. But we lack the truth. He lifted the mother-of-pearl button. This came from a glove. Whose? Silence. Then Lydia gasped, staring at Captain Thorne's empty sleeve. Captain, you wore gloves last night. Kid leather, pearl buttons. Thorne's face drained. I lost one in the garden weeks ago. Poirot smiled thinly. We shall see. He moved to the mantelpiece where a small ormolu clock ticked with malevolent cheer. One more matter. The suicide note. The ghosts have won. Matron's handwriting? Hargrove produced a folded sheet. Poirot compared it to a ledger entry. The pressure is wrong. A forgery by someone who trembled. Fear or guilt. Lightning illuminated the room. For an instant, every face was a mask of terror. Poirot clapped once. "Assez. You will remain here under Inspector Japp's watchful eye." The door opened to admit the stolid policeman. "While Poirot examines the West Tower, the ghost must be laid to rest." As he reached the door, Lydia's voice stopped him. "Monsieur, there is something. In Matron's desk, a locket. I found it this morning." She held out a small silver heart. Inside, a miniature photograph of a young soldier, Thorn, unmistakable. On the back engraved, "To E, my eternal shame." E.T. Thorn lunged, but Japp restrained him. "She kept it to torment me." Poirot closed the locket with a snap. "Blackmail takes many forms, but murder, that is another currency." He stepped into the corridor. Behind him, the suspect's whispers rose like steam. The chandelier flickered. Shadows danced. At the foot of the West Tower stairs, Poirot paused. A single candle guttered in a wall sconce. On the stone step above lay a fresh chamomile petal, white, innocent, deadly. "Quelqu'un returns to the scene," he murmured. But why? The stair spiraled upward into darkness. From above came the softest sound. A woman's sob or laughter. Poirot began to climb, patent shoes silent on the worn treads. The hunt tightened. Chapter 3. Whispers of the Past. The West Tower stair was a throat of stone, swallowing light and sound. Hercule Poirot ascended with the measured gait of a man who trusted geometry more than instinct. Each step exhaled centuries of damp and despair. The candle in his left hand painted the walls in bruised amber. At the 12th tread he paused, lens to the wall. A smear of green silk caught on a nail, the exact shade of Madame Voss's gown. Tiens, she came this way, alive or carried. Higher, the air grew colder, laced with jasmine and something metallic. The stair opened onto a circular chamber no wider than a confessional. A single lancet window wept rain. Beneath it stood a walnut secretaire, its pigeonholes stuffed with yellowed letters tied in faded ribbon. A woman's veil, black lace torn, hung from the back of a chair like a flayed skin. Poirot set the candle on the sill. The flame bowed, then steadied. Parfait. A trysting place or a prison? He opened the secretaire. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its lock snapped. The first page, in Ilara Voss's angular hand, 15th of March, 1932. The house remembers. I hear her in the pipes at night. Forgive me, Clara. Poirot's mustache twitched. Clara, Voss's younger sister, drowned in the ornamental lake in 1919. Official verdict, suicide. Yet the sanatorium's founding charter, framed downstairs, bore both sisters' signatures. He read on, voice a murmur against the storm. 22 April. R.H. grows bold. He thinks I do not see the ledgers. If he touches the trust, I will ruin him. 7 June. The child, L.B., watches me with Clara's eyes. She must be broken before she breaks us. 1 October. E.T. paid again. The locket is insurance. War heroes make the best ghosts. Poirot closed the journal, slipping it inside his breast pocket. Motifs clair. Greed, fear, blood. A floorboard sighed behind him. He whirled, candle raised, nothing, only shadows and the veil stirring in a draught. Yet on the chair seat lay a fresh chamomile petal, its edge bruised purple. Someone had been here after Lydia's scream. He knelt, lens to the floorboards. A faint scuff, heel mark, small, pivoting, and there, a single pearl button, twin to the one from the study. Deux boutons. The glove unravels. The window latch rattled. Poirot crossed in 3 silent strides and flung it open. Rain lashed his face. Below, the courtyard was a black mirror reflecting lightning. A figure darted from the kitchen door toward the glass house, cloak billowing, hood obscuring the face. "I say," Poirot called, but thunder swallowed the word. He descended faster than decorum allowed, candle extinguished, navigating by memory and the blue-white flashes. The tower door at ground level opened onto the scullery corridor. Mrs. Croft stood there, arms folded, blocking his path. "Lost, monsieur?" Her tone could have frozen brandy. "Madame, you guard this door like Cerberus. Why? Patients wander. The tower is forbidden. Yet someone wanders still." He brushed past. She smelled of carbolic and fear. The kitchen was deserted, the still-room door ajar. Inside, the spirit lamp glowed crimson. On the workbench, a mortar dusted with fresh foxglove, a funnel, and a brown bottle labeled Digitalis 100. The level had dropped since morning. Poirot lifted the bottle to the light. 60 minimes manquants, enough for a second murder. A soft clink behind him. He turned. Lydia Beaumont stood in the doorway, cape sodden, hair escaping her cap in damp curls. In her gloved hand, the missing vial from the study. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, "I came for laudanum. The patients. They scream." Her pupils were pinpricks. "Mademoiselle, you bring me the poison itself. How convenient." She flinched. "I found it in the glass house. Someone left it on the bench." Poirot took the vial, its label torn, residue sticky. "And the cloak? You wear green wool, yet the figure I saw wore black." I don't know." Her gaze slid to the mortar. "Matron distilled her own tinctures. She taught me." "Taught you to kill?" Lydia's sob was theatrical. "She said I was her daughter, then locked me in the dark to cure my weakness. I hated her, yes, but I didn't." Footsteps in the corridor. Dr. Hargrove appeared, disheveled, a Webley revolver in his hand. "Poirot, thank God. Thorne's escaped his room. He's raving about ghosts and justice." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Docteur, you arm yourself quickly, expecting trouble?" Hargrove's laugh was brittle. "This is an asylum. Trouble is currency." Lightning revealed the courtyard. Captain Thorne limped across the gravel, nightshirt plastered to his skin, shouting at the sky. "Clara, show yourself!" Poirot moved to the door. "Attendes, the ghost has a name." They ran. Rain stung like buckshot. Thorne reached the ornamental lake, its surface black glass, lily pads rotting. He raised a lantern taken from the stables. "Clara Voss," he bellowed, "you drowned for nothing." Poirot arrived breathless. "Capitaine, enough theatrics. Clara drowned in 1919. You were in France." Thorne's face twisted. "I knew her. Before the war. Ilara's little sister, wild, beautiful. She wrote to me at the front, promised to wait." He laughed, a sound like breaking ice. "Then Ilara locked her away, said she was mad. I came back to find her grave." Hargrove lowered the revolver. "Thorne, you're delirious. Morphine—" "Liar!" Thorne lunged. The lantern shattered. Oil flared across the water. For an instant, the lake burned blue. In the flame's reflection, Poirot saw it. Beneath the surface, a chain glinted, anchored to a concrete block. Mon Dieu! Clara did not drown alone. He turned to Lydia, who had followed. "Mademoiselle, you knew of this?" She shook her head, but her eyes were on the chain. "Matron said Clara walked into the water. That she was unclean." Hargrove's revolver rose again, this time toward Poirot. "Too many questions, monsieur. The past stays buried." Thunder crashed. Darkness swallowed the gun. When lightning returned, Hargrove was gone, Thorne on his knees in the mud, and Lydia staring at her gloved hands as though they belonged to a stranger. From the house, a scream, Mrs. Croft's voice raw with terror. "The study, she's back!" Poirot ran, the others trailing. The study door stood open. Inside, the corpse of Ilara Voss sat upright in her chair, eyes wide, a fresh chamomile flower tucked behind one ear. On the desk, in dripping red ink, "The ghosts have only begun." Chapter 4. The Locked Room. Enigma Poirot stood motionless before the upright corpse, candlelight flickering across Ilara Voss's painted smile. The chamomile bloom drooped, heavy with rainwater and something darker. "Impossible," Hargrove muttered, reappearing in the doorway, revolver lowered. "I left her slumped at 9. Yet here she sits," Poirot said, "arranged like a marionette. Regardez, the spine is straight, the hands folded. Rigor mortis does not permit such posture after 12 hours. He touched the corpse's cheek. Cold, but the jaw slackened too soon. "Death at 8, not 10. The clock was stopped at 10:07 to mislead us." Lydia hovered behind Hargrove, eyes wide. "I locked the door at 8:30, key inside." Poirot produced his lens. The key lay on the carpet now, its bow bent. Forcé, a duplicate perhaps. He examined the lock. Fresh scratches, a hairline crack in the escutcheon. "Mon Dieu, a panel." He pressed the wainscot beside the fireplace. A section swung inward on concealed hinges, narrow but wide enough for a slight figure. Dust on the sill was disturbed. A single green thread clung like a confession. Hargrove paled. "That passage leads to the old wine cellar, boarded since the war. Yet someone uses it." Poirot stepped through. The tunnel smelled of earth and rot. His candle revealed footprints, small, heeled, heading both ways. Back in the study, he lifted the teacup shards. 2 poisons, digitalis in the dregs, laudanum on the rim. A cocktail to confuse the coroner. Thorne limped in, soaked and shaking. "I saw her, Clara, through the panel," she beckoned. "Hallucination," Hargrove snapped. "Morphine." Poirot's gaze pinned him. "Or distraction. While we chased ghosts, the killer returned to stage this tableau." He opened Voss's ledger. Entries ceased mid-sentence. "If I die, trust no." The ink trailed off in a frantic scrawl. "Interrupted," Poirot murmured. "She knew her murderer." Mrs. Croft appeared, flour on her apron. "The maids found this in the cellar." She held out a kid glove, left hand, 2 pearl buttons missing. Lydia gasped. "That's mine. I lost it weeks ago." "Convenient," Poirot echoed her earlier word. He sniffed the glove, jasmine and foxglove. Thunder crashed. The lights died. In the darkness, glass shattered, the window. A gloved hand reached through the bars, depositing a fresh chamomile on the sill, then vanished. When light returned, the flower lay innocent, stem crushed. Poirot smiled grimly. "Le piège est tendu. The murderer cannot resist the stage." He addressed them all. "Tonight we reenact. Mademoiselle Lydia brews tea at 8. Dr. Hargrove prescribes digitalis. Captain Thorne guards the door. Mrs. Croft watches the panel. At the stroke of 9, the killer will return, et Poirot sera prêt." As they dispersed, Poirot lingered, tracing the panel's edge. Behind it, a faint scratching, like fingernails on wood. He leaned close. "Patience, mon fantôme. Your curtain falls soon." Chapter 5. Shadows and Alibis. In the kitchen, Lydia Beaumont measured chamomile with trembling fingers. The kettle hissed like a serpent. Poirot watched from the doorway, pocket watch open. 2 drops of digitalis exactamente as Matron took, he instructed. "No more." Lydia's eyes flicked to the spirit lamp, still warm from the afternoon's distillation. "She insisted on brewing her own. Said mine was weak." Poirot noted the fresh foxglove petals drying on a rack. "Yet tonight, you obey." She poured the tea, honey swirling gold. The cup, violet-painted unchipped, waited on a silver tray. Upstairs, Dr. Hargrove paced the study, revolver on the desk beside the open ledger. Captain Thorne stood at the door, lantern in his remaining hand, scar livid in the gaslight. Mrs. Croft guarded the panel, rolling pin clutched like a cudgel. Poirot slipped into the hidden passage, candle snuffed. Darkness pressed close, the air tasted of earth and secrets. He counted steps, 20 to the cellar fork, 30 to the glasshouse door. A draft carried Jasmine. At 8:17, the study clock chimed. Silence. 8:23, footsteps on the main stair. Lydia's heels, light and hurried. She entered the study, tray steady. Matron's tea. Hargrove took the cup, sniffed, set it on the desk. As prescribed. 8:29. Thorne shifted. Something moved in the corridor. 8:31. The panel creaked. Mrs. Croft raised the rolling pin. Nothing. Poirot in the tunnel heard it all through the thin wall. Then, a second set of footsteps softer from the cellar end. He turned, lens to the floor, fresh mud, small prints leading up. 8:35. The study door locked from within. Hargrove's voice muffled. "She's here." Poirot raced back, emerging through the panel just as the lights guttered. A woman's scream, Lydia's. When the lamps flared, the tableau had changed. The teacup lay shattered, digitalis vial empty on the blotter. Hargrove stood over a second body, Mrs. Croft, throat bruised, rolling pin beside her. "She came through the panel," Hargrove shouted. "Tried to poison the tea again," Lydia sobbed. "I never left the room," Thorne's Dezou. Lantern revealed the truth. Croft's apron pocket held the missing duplicate key and a third pearl button. Poirot knelt. Non, she was the guardian, not the killer, strangled to silence her. Pulse faint, but there. He examined the panel. A silk cord, green, looped around the inner latch, used to pull it shut from the outside. Ingénieux? The murderer entered via cellar, strangled Mrs. Croft, staged the attack, exited the same way, but the cord, he tugged, it slipped free, betrays the height, too high for Mademoiselle. Lydia's eyes widened. "Then who?" A groan from the corridor. Inspector Japp dragged in a figure, Dr. Hargrove, bound, mouth gagged with his own cravat. "Found him in the cellar tampering with the gas main," Japp growled. "Tried to blow us all to kingdom come." The real Hargrove stepped forward, pale but composed. "I was locked in the dispensary. Someone stole my coat, my revolver." Poirot's gaze swept the room. Deux docteurs. The impostor used the tunnel, impersonated Hargrove, staged the attack. But the shoes, he pointed to muddy brogues on the fake. Size 10, docteur wears 8. The impostor spat out the gag. Captain Thorne's voice ragged. "She deserved it. Ilara and Clara, both monsters," Lydia screamed. Thorne lunged for the revolver, but Japp felled him with a truncheon. Poirot lifted the green cord. "You strangled Mrs. Croft to protect your secret, Clara's body chained in the lake. But the buttons, mon capitaine, your glove, left in the tunnel weeks ago when you searched for Clara's locket." Thorne laughed, blood on his teeth. "Ilara kept it in the study. I came for it tonight. Croft saw me." Hargrove, the real one, knelt by the housekeeper. "She'll live." "But the motive, Clara?" Poirot's voice was soft iron. "Clara Voss was pregnant. Ilara drowned her to hide the shame. Thorne, the father, returned from war to find his love murdered. Blackmail became vengeance." Lightning cracked. In the flash, the study mirror reflected a final horror. Behind the glass, a woman's face. Ilara, eyes open, watching. The mirror swung inward. A hidden compartment. Inside, Clara's locket, chain broken, and a water-stained letter. "If I die, Elias, avenge me." Poirot closed the locket. La boucle est bouclée, the circle closes. But as Japp cuffed Thorne, a fresh chamomile petal drifted from the ceiling rose. Impossible. Deliberate. Poirot looked up. Non. One ghost remains. Chapter 6. The Web of Deception. Captain Thorne sat handcuffed between two constables, head bowed, the scar on his forehead livid under the chandelier. Mrs. Croft lay on the settee, breathing shallow but steady, a bruise blooming across her throat. Dr. Hargrove poured brandy with shaking hands. Lydia Beaumont stood apart, arms wrapped around herself as though holding her ribs in place. Poirot paced the Persian rug, the chamomile petal pinched between gloved fingers. "Mes amis," he began, voice velvet over steel. "We have a confession, presque." Captain Thorne admits strangling Mrs. Croft to silence her. He admits entering the tunnel to retrieve Clara's locket. He admits hatred for Alara Voss. Yet, he held the petal to the light. This flower fell from the ceiling after Thorne was subdued. Someone else walks free. Thorne lifted his head. "I killed no one but Croft tonight. Alara was already dead when I reached the study." Hargrove snorted. "Convenient. You had motive, means, opportunity." "Attendez." Poirot produced the green silk cord. "This strangled Mrs. Croft. Thorne's remaining hand is scarred, arthritic. Impossible to tie such a knot one-handed. And the height," he raised the cord to the bruise on Croft's neck, "matches a taller assailant." Lydia's whisper cut the silence. "Then, Dr. Hargrove?" The physician recoiled. "I was locked in the dispensary." Poirot turned to him, eyes glittering. "Oui. Locked by whom?" "The impostor wore your coat, your shoes. Size 10. Borrowed from the boot room. But the coat," he lifted Hargrove's tweed from a chair, "has a tear at the cuff. The impostor's did not." He crossed to the fireplace, pressed a carved rose. A narrow drawer slid open. Inside, a second tweed coat, cuff torn, mud on the hem. "Deux manteaux. You staged your own abduction, doctor, to deflect suspicion. You strangled Croft, planted the petal, impersonated yourself." Hargrove's face crumpled. "Alara was selling Roseveil, I'd be penniless. She laughed when I begged. I poisoned the tea, slowly over weeks, then swapped the cup that final night. The locked door, I used the panel, locked it with the duplicate, exited via the cellar." Lydia sobbed. "You used me. Said we'd marry once she was gone." Poirot's gaze softened, then hardened. "Mademoiselle, you brewed the tea. You knew the digitalis dose, you found the body, yet delayed the alarm by 7 minutes. Why?" She sank to her knees. "He promised me the sanatorium. Said Matron wasn't my mother, just a tyrant. I added extra drops that last night. I thought it was mercy." Thunder rolled. The chandelier trembled. Poirot lifted the journal from his pocket. "Écoutez. Alara Voss wrote, 'LB is Clara's child. I took her at birth to hide the shame. She must never know. You, mademoiselle, are Voss's niece, heiress to everything. Hargrove discovered this, seduced you, turned you into his weapon.'" Hargrove lunged for the revolver on the mantel. Jap intercepted, wrestling him down. Thorne laughed, a broken sound. "All of you monsters. Clara drowned carrying my child. Alara chained her in the lake to silence the scandal. I came for justice, not murder." Poirot knelt beside Mrs. Croft as she stirred. "Madam, you knew," her voice rasped. "Saw the doctor carry the girl, Lydia, from the lake cottage the night Clara died. Said she was orphaned. I kept silent for my wage." Poirot stood. "La toile est tissée, the web complete. Hargrove poisoned Alara for greed. Lydia aided for love and legacy. Thorne sought vengeance but killed only to protect his secret. Mrs. Croft guarded the truth for survival." He opened the locket found in the mirror. Inside, Clara's portrait and a lock of baby hair, Lydia's. "Famille," Poirot murmured. "The cruelest motive." As constables led Hargrove and Lydia away, Thorne remained staring at the lake through the window. Rain had stopped. Moonlight silvered the water. "Clara," he whispered, "I failed you." Poirot placed a hand on his shoulder. "Non, mon capitaine, you failed yourself. The war took your arm, but hate took your soul." From the ceiling rose another petal drifted down, slow, deliberate. Poirot caught it. "Encore?" He looked up. The plaster was cracked, a dark gap visible. A child's voice, faint. "Ante Lara." Poirot's blood chilled. "Mon Dieu, there is another." Chapter 7. Fractured Minds. The chandelier swayed, though no wind stirred. Every eye followed the petal's descent until it settled on the rug like a white moth. Poirot did not move. "Oh no!" The attic. Inspector Japp drew his whistle. "Constables, stairs now!" But Poirot raised a gloved hand. "Doucement. A child does not flee, she hides." He crossed to the grand staircase, patent shoes silent. The others followed. Hargrove cuffed between two officers, Lydia pale as parchment, Thorne limping, Mrs. Croft supported by a nurse. The main stair ended at a baize door. Beyond, servants' quarters, then a narrower flight, uncarpeted, leading to the eaves. Dust lay thick. Cobwebs brushed Poirot's hat like funeral lace. At the top, a single door, padlocked from the outside. Fresh scratches marred the paint. "Curieux," locked out. Japp produced a jemmy. The lock snapped. The door opened inward on darkness that smelled of chamomile and unwashed linen. Poirot stepped through. A dormer window let in moonlight. Beneath it, a child's cot, iron-framed, sheets yellowed. On the wall, crayon drawings, stick figures in green dresses, one with a noose of flowers. A small shape huddled in the corner, knees to chin, hair a wild auburn tangle. "Ma petite," Poirot said softly, "you are safe." The girl looked up, 8, perhaps 9, eyes the exact violet of Lydia's. A chamomile chain circled her neck. Lydia gasped. "Rosamond!" The child flinched. "Aunt Lara said no one must see me. I'm the secret." Mrs. Croft's voice cracked. "Clara's second child. Born after the drowning. Matron kept her locked away, said she was simple. Fed her digitalis to keep her quiet." Poirot knelt. "Rosamond, did you place the flowers?" She nodded. "Aunt Lara taught me. Said if I was good, she'd let me see the lake. But she fell asleep forever." A tear tracked dust on her cheek. "I put flowers on her every night, so she won't be lonely." Hargrove laughed, a sick sound. "Another heiress. Ilara planned to institutionalize her, sign the papers the day she died." Poirot stood. "Ainsi." The petals were not threats, but mourning. The ghost was a child grieving. He turned to Lydia. "You knew of your sister?" Lydia shook her head violently. "Matron said I was alone, that Clara died before I was born." Rosamond extended a grubby hand. In it, the missing digitalis vial, half full. "For Aunt Lara's heart." She dropped it when she fell. Poirot took the vial. The final dose, spilled in convulsion. No second murder. Thorne sank to the floor. "All this for nothing." Japp cleared his throat. "Case closed, then?" Hargrove poisoned Voss, Lydia aided, Thorne assaulted Croft, child's innocent. Poirot's gaze lingered on the crayon drawings. One showed a woman in green pushing another into blue scribbles. Lake. Presque. He lifted the drawing. "Rosamond, who pushed the lady into the water?" The child pointed at the wall. A shadow moved behind a false panel, barely the width of a wardrobe. Poirot pressed. The panel slid. Inside, a narrow chamber, a pallet, chains bolted to the floor. And a woman, gaunt, gray-streaked, eyes wild. "Clara," Thorne breathed. Clara Voss stepped out, wrists raw from manacles. "I never drowned. Ilara drugged me, chained me, told the world I was dead, raised my daughters as orphans. Rosamond smuggled food when she could." Lydia fell to her knees. "Mother?" Clara's smile was terrible. Ilara planned to kill you both. Sign Roseveil to charity. Keep the fortune. I escaped the chains tonight. Saw her die through the panel. Left the flowers to mark her grave. Hargrove strained against cuffs. Lies! She's mad! Poirot's voice cut like winter. No, the mad one was Ilara. Digitalis for control, not cure. The locked room? Clara watched through the panel, saw the convulsion, locked the door from inside with a hairpin, exited via the attic. The upright corpse? She returned to say goodbye. He faced Clara. But you let innocence suffer. Clara's eyes were centuries old. I waited 16 years. Justice is slow. Rosamond ran to her mother. Clara cradled the child, chamomile chain falling like a broken rosary. Poirot turned away. Famille, the cruelest cage. As dawn bled through the dormer, the sanatorium bells tolled. Slow, final. Chapter 8. The noose tightens. The drawing room had become a courtroom without walls. Constables stood at every door. Inspector Japp's notebook lay open like a ledger of sins. Clara Voss sat erect on a straight-backed chair, wrists bandaged but unchained, Rosamond asleep against her shoulder. Lydia knelt nearby, face buried in her mother's lap, silent tears soaking the wool. Dr. Hargrove and Captain Thorne were cuffed to opposite radiators, Hargrove's head lolling, Thorne staring at Clara as though she were a resurrection. Poirot stood before the cold hearth, the crayon drawing of the lake pinned to the mantel with a stiletto. Mesdames, Messieurs, he began, voice quiet yet carrying to the rafters, the play is nearly done. One act remains. He lifted the chamomile chain from the rug. 16 flowers, one for each year Clara was buried alive. Rosamond wove it nightly, slipped through the panel to lay on her aunt's corpse. A child's requiem. Clara spoke, voice raw from disuse. Ilara drugged my tea the night I drowned, woke chained in the attic. She told the world I'd taken my life in shame. Raised Lydia as a servant, Rosamond as a secret, planned to sign us both away. Lunacy papers, charity bequest, fortune intact. Hargrove sneered. Madness bred madness, I only hastened the inevitable. Poirot's eyes glittered. Précisez, docteur. You discovered Clara alive? 3 months ago. Heard scratching behind the study wall. Offered silence for a price, half the estate. Ilara refused, so I poisoned her slowly, digitalis in the honey. Lydia added the final drops, thinking it mercy. Lydia lifted her head. He said we'd marry, that Matron wasn't family, just a jailer. Poirot turned to Thorne. Capitaine, you knew Clara lived? Thorne's voice cracked. I came for the locket, proof of our child. Found the attic panel ajar, saw her shadow, thought it a ghost. When Croft caught me, I strangled her to keep the secret. Mrs. Croft, throat bruised purple, rasped from the settee. I knew since the girl was born, smuggled milk, bread, kept my tongue for my wage. Poirot nodded. Parfait. Motives align, yet one thread dangles. He crossed to the mantel, lifted the stiletto, and prized open the back of the ormolu clock. Inside, a tiny brass key and a folded scrap. Ilara Voss's handwriting, ink still wet. If I die tonight, look to the lake. The chain is Clara's. Forgive me nothing. Clara's breath hitched. She wrote that after I escaped. Knew I'd come for her. Poirot faced the room. La vérité. Ilara Voss imprisoned her sister, faked the drowning, raised the children as pawns. Hargrove poisoned her for greed. Lydia aided for love. Thorne assaulted to protect Clara's secret. Mrs. Croft guarded for survival. Clara, he met her eyes, watched through the panel, locked the door with the hairpin, left the flowers. But the upright corpse, the red ink, the chamomile on the sill, c'est vous, Clara. A final accusation. Clara's smile was winter. She sat me upright once to sign papers. I returned the favor. Japp closed his notebook. Charges: Hargrove, murder; Lydia, accessory; Thorne, assault; Clara, confinement, evidence tampering; Croft, conspiracy after the fact. Poirot raised a hand. Un moment. The law is blind, but Poirot sees. Clara suffered 16 years. Rosamond is innocent. Let justice temper mercy. He turned to Clara. You will testify. The sanatorium closes, the fortune, yours and your daughter's. Roseveil becomes a school, not a cage. Clara bowed her head. Rosamond stirred, murmuring. No more locks. Hargrove lunged, cuffs rattling. You can't. Japp's truncheon silenced him. Poirot addressed the room. Finis, the circle breaks. He opened the French windows. Dawn light flooded in, gilding the lake where chains lay broken on the mud. A single chamomile bloomed on the bank, wild, defiant. As constables led the prisoners out, Poirot lingered. He placed the crayon drawing in Clara's hands. Pour l'avenir, he said. Draw new stories. Clara pressed it to her heart. Rosamond took Poirot's gloved hand. Merci, monsieur. Will you visit? Poirot's mustache twitched. Peut-être. The little gray cells require rest. Outside, the Daimler waited. Poirot paused on the steps, breathing air scrubbed clean by rain. Behind him, Roseveil House stood silent. No screams, no ghosts. Only the soft chime of a child's laugh, echoing down corridors soon to be classrooms. Chapter 9. The reckoning sunlight poured through the stained-glass angel, scattering red and gold across the parquet. The portraits of stern Voss ancestors seemed to soften in the warmth. Dust motes danced like freed souls. Constables stood at ease now, notebooks closed. The prisoners, Hargrove, Lydia, Thorne, waited in a row on the oak settle, wrists cuffed, faces stripped of masks. Clara Voss sat apart on the window seat. Rosamond curled in her lap, both wrapped in the same blanket. Mrs. Croft hovered nearby, offering weak tea no one drank. Hercule Poirot stood at the foot of the staircase, hands clasped behind his back, the crayon drawing of the lake now rolled and tied with a chamomile stem. Mesdames, messieurs, he began, voice clear as a bell. The curtain falls. Let us speak plainly, without theatrics. He turned first to Dr. Reginald Hargrove. You poisoned Alara Voss over 6 weeks, digitalis in the honey, 2 drops nightly, building to fatality. You forged the suicide note on your prescription pad, pressure marks betraying a trembling hand. You swapped the teacups, used the panel tunnel, locked the door with the duplicate key you had cut in Exeter. Motive: greed. She planned to sell Roseveil and leave you bankrupt. Hargrove's laugh was hollow. She mocked me, said I was a leech. Poirot's gaze shifted to Lydia Beaumont. You, mademoiselle, added the final 4 drops on the fatal night, believing it mercy for a tyrant. You delayed the alarm 7 minutes to arrange the corpse, plant the forged note, hide the vial. You staged the ghost in veil and chamomile to frighten suspects. Motive: love for Hargrove, and the promise of inheritance you never knew was already yours. Lydia's tears fell soundlessly. He said we'd be free. Poirot faced Captain Elias Thorne. You assaulted Mrs. Croft to protect Clara's secret. You entered the tunnel to retrieve the locket, proof of your child with Clara. You impersonated Hargrove with stolen coat and shoes, attempted to sabotage the gas main. Motive: vengeance for a love buried alive. Thorne's remaining hand clenched. I failed her twice. Poirot looked to Mrs. Croft. You smuggled food to Clara and Rosamond for 16 years, kept silent for your wage and your sister's memory. You hid the duplicate key, the torn coat, the green cord. Motive: survival. Croft's chin lifted. Someone had to feed the child. Finally, Poirot turned to Clara Voss. You escaped your chains with a hairpin on the night Alara died. You watched through the panel as she convulsed, locked the door from inside, exited via the attic. You sat the corpse upright, wrote in red ink, left chamomile on the sill, your signature. You allowed others to suffer while you waited for justice. Motive: 16 years of captivity. Clara met his eyes, unblinking. She stole my children, my name, my life. I gave her a mirror. Poirot nodded once. La logique est complète. He unrolled the crayon drawing, held it up. Rosamond drew truth before she had words. The lake, the chain, the woman in green pushing another into water. Ilara staged Clara's drowning in 1919, chained her in the attic, raised Lydia as servant, Rosamond as secret. The sanatorium was built on bones. Inspector Japp stepped forward. Charges stand. Hargrove and Lydia to trial for murder, Thorne for assault and attempted arson, Clara for unlawful confinement and evidence tampering, Croft as accessory. Poirot raised a gloved hand. Un moment. The law must breathe. Clara suffered unspeakable wrong. Rosamond is blameless. I propose Hargrove and Lydia to prison, Thorne to military hospital. His mind is the true casualty. Clara and Rosamond to remain free under guardianship. Roseveil sold. Proceeds to a trust for the girls. The house becomes a school for war orphans. No more cages. Japp hesitated, then nodded. Crown prosecutor will agree. Public won't stomach chaining a woman 16 years buried. Clara stood, Rosamond in her arms. Merci, monsieur, you gave us tomorrow. Poirot bowed. Madame, tomorrow is the only ghost worth believing in. He placed the rolled drawing in Rosamond's hands. Draw flowers, ma petite, not chains. As the constables led the prisoners out, Hargrove spat, You'll regret this, Mercy, Poirot. Poirot's smile was small, ferocious. Non, mercy is the only order that endures. Outside, the Daimler idled. Poirot paused on the steps, breathing air sweet with wet earth and possibility. Behind him, Clara's voice rose in a lullaby, soft, steady, the first note of a new world. Chapter 10. Order restored. The ivy had been trimmed, the granite scoured clean. Sunlight poured through windows no longer barred. Where once the great hall echoed with screams, children's voices now rose in lessons. French, verbs, multiplication tables, the bright clatter of chalk on slate. The sanatorium's brass plaques had been melted down. In their place hung a simple sign, Roseveil School for War Orphans, founded 1935. Hercule Poirot arrived unannounced, stepping from the Daimler onto gravel raked smooth as a Zen garden. He wore dove-gray spats, a carnation in his buttonhole, and the satisfied air of a man who has arranged the universe to his liking. Clara Voss met him at the door. She had gained weight, color. Her hair was cropped short, practical, the gray now threaded with defiant auburn. Rosamond clung to her skirt, cheeks round, eyes bright with ordinary mischief. Monsieur Poirot, Clara said, curtsying with mock formality. You are late for tea. Madame, he replied, bowing over her hand. The little gray cells insisted on a detour to Fortnum and Mason. One cannot educate the young on chamomile alone. He presented a tin of Darjeeling Imperial and a box of Petit's Fours. Rosamond tugged his sleeve. I drew you a picture. She thrust forward a sheet. Poirot in green, mustaches heroic, standing beside a lake where stick-figure girls held hands with a tall lady. No chains. Magnifique, he declared, tucking it into his breast pocket beside the heart. They walked the corridors. The study was now a library. Ilara's specimen jars replaced by globes and encyclopedias. The hidden panel stood open, converted into a puppet theater. Children's laughter spilled from it like sunlight. The attic had been gutted, skylights installed. Dormers now housed bright beds for 20 orphans. In the old drawing room, now the refectory, Lydia Beaumont served soup to a table of boys. She wore no cap, her hair pinned simply. The violet shadows beneath her eyes had faded to memory. Poirot paused. "Mademoiselle." She met his gaze steady. "I teach domestic science. The courts were merciful. 2 years probation here under Clara's supervision." "Bien. You brew an honest broth." She smiled, small, genuine. "No honey." Outside, Captain Thorne pushed a wheelchair along the gravel path. His empty sleeve was pinned neatly. The other hand guided a boy learning to walk again. Thorne's limp had eased. The scar on his forehead was pale against tanned skin. "Capitaine," Poirot called. Thorne saluted with his good arm. "Military hospital discharged me, fit for light duties. Clara offered work. I teach carpentry, the boys build birdhouses." He gestured to a row of brightly painted boxes nailed to the old yew tree. Poirot's mustache twitched approval. L'oiseau chante libre. Mrs. Croft emerged from the kitchen garden, arms full of rosemary. "Lunch in 20 minutes, monsieur. You'll stay?" "Avec plaisir." They gathered on the terrace overlooking the lake. The water was clear now. Lilies bloomed where chains had rusted. A plaque read, "In memory of secrets buried, let none be chained again." Clara poured tea. "The trust is solvent. Hargrove's trial begins next month. Life no parole. The fortune funds the school for 50 years. Poirot sipped. "Parfait. And you, madame?" She looked at Rosamond chasing butterflies, at Lydia laughing with a child, at Thorne teaching a boy to plane wood. "I teach history, the true kind." A bell rang. Lunch. Children poured out, faces scrubbed, uniforms patched but proud. Poirot found himself surrounded, pelted with questions. "Did you really catch a murderer? Will you teach us deduction?" He raised a hand. "Mes enfants, one lesson only, order and method. Observe, deduce, and above all, be kind. The world has monsters enough." Rosamond slipped her hand into his. "Will you come back?" Poirot knelt eye to eye. "Chaque année at Easter. We shall hunt chocolate eggs, not ghosts." The Daimler waited. As Poirot climbed in, Clara pressed a small bundle into his hands, chamomile shortbread wrapped in brown paper. "Pour le voyage," she said. He unwrapped one piece, bit, closed his eyes. "Comme il faut." The car rolled down the drive. In the rearview mirror, Roseveil shrank, children waving, Clara's arm around Lydia, Thorne lifting Rosamond to his shoulder. The lake glittered, chainless. Poirot leaned back, shortbread crumbling on his lap. The little gray cells, for once, were silent. Order restored.